So one of the really, really important things is when we went down this path, is having people who were willing to say, what the heck, I'll go along that path with you. I don't know if it'll work, but what the heck. Having support people, and this is my favorite person. Wait, what about me?
You too.
Okay, Russ was a professor at university, and he introduced us to people, to Native people. He said, what the heck, let's give this a try. He got us out in the field working with people who'd never call us because no one knew what we were, no one believed us. And Russ, how many years? Well, we used to be young and beautiful.
Now we're just 39.
And Russ has been with us
27, 28 years.
Yeah, because, and he has continued, and then he like moved away from California, and we go to Texas now to see him, and it's like people like Russ that have helped create, given us credibility when we had none, because we had started, and so we asked him to do this, and it's a different perspective. It's not just us dog people saying how good we are.
I liked it when she said, when I walked down the path, but I always looked where I stepped first. I'm a dog owner too. Should I take it from there?
Take it away, Mr. Russ.
Okay, Chief. I appreciate everyone coming out this afternoon. I'll try to wake you a little here. Some of our colleagues are present with us in the room. Dr. Juan Gonzalez is with us. Dr. Sarah Rowe is in another session presenting right now. And our colleague Roseanne Bachagarza is presenting in Austin, doing some work there, and Karina is doing I don't know what else back at the university. But these are a group of people, and we've all been working together out at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and have brought the dogs in to bear on this. I have to start this off because, as you've just heard, I've been involved with these folks since the last century, which shows you how old we are. And when I started working with them, I'd already been involved in archaeology for over a quarter of a century. And I'm out there, and my dear friend and their dear friend, Dr. Lorna Pierce, who's a forensic person, worked with the county coroner's office out there, had said, I'm working with these folks out there at Moffett Field. I want you to come out and see about the potential of this. And I went out, and of course, I'm there, and the first thing that comes to mind is a sideshow in a circus. How old are you? And the horse will clop its foot on the ground. Well, I shut up pretty fast along these lines, and we began to go out and work, as you said, with some of the folks out there in the Ohlone community in the Bay Area at that time. And became convinced enough that one of our friends at that point took everyone over to Prague, and they were working out there in Prague and identifying Bronze Age burials in the site. So things started to snowball back in the day. I have to bring my father with me on this trip because the story you told earlier is always, to me, humorous. My father said, I'll be damned if I'll be buried in Brooklyn. I'm not from Brooklyn. And my mother said, I won't be cremated and I'm not going to Arlington. And I said, we can work this out. Mom, you can go to Brooklyn. Dad, assuming you go first, you can be cremated. You can go to Arlington. You can go with your mom and dad to the Bronx. You can go a little bit with Mom to Brooklyn. Okay, he said. And I'd like to work with the dog people. And I said, problem solved. So Dad is in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. He's in California working with these guys. And he's spread all over, as my mother would say. You never know where he's sleeping at night. But anyway, that's another story. So that was my dad's story. Sorry, Dad, I had to do that. But Lorna is our dear friend. Just saw her a few weeks ago in the city. These guys, again, we've been friends a very long time. And I went out to Texas and about 8-9 years ago in 2017, invited them to come out. And we invited them to come out because of a project that Sarah Rowe was working on out there. And they came out and made lectures in the classroom, which is always a good way to educate the students to see what can be done and involved in it. But Sarah's project she was dragooned into it. She had come out there, had started just a few years earlier, and it was one of the classic projects where the county has the county cemetery. And of course, no one has a map of who's buried where. And not everyone has a headstone. So she'd been out there working with her students, inventorying 1,000 grave sites, doing all kinds of different things. And as you can see, if you read through this, I'm not going to read it for you, came out and the dogs came out and showed that there are 40 unmarked graves that they were able to get involved with. And here are just some, action shots. Well, imagine them moving or not moving. Action shots, and you can say, well, what's the big deal? They're out there and they're involved. There are the markers. But of course, there are other ones. That should look familiar to you. And recording of the sites. And I think one of the best things, and I like this group shot at the end, Sarah gave me this quote because she said I couldn't be in the room. And you can see it's the greatest thing that everything lines up. And that's all you've heard now for the last hour. Everything lines up. This isn't a sideshow act. Rhonda just demonstrated that this stuff is replicable and the work can be done. And so if you look here, you can see Sarah in the front, and back there, standing in the back row, is Roseanne Bachagarza, who, again, isn't here. She's in Austin. But Roseanne has been working with the African American community in the Valley over all these years. Some of it involved with the Underground Railroad, dating back to the pre-Civil War and Civil War period, and then in a segregated cemetery that exists in the community. And of course, another one of these segregated cemeteries is a lot of the people that are buried in there didn't have money for markers through the years. And now we've reached a stage where other family members want to be buried. And the last thing we want is alas, poor Yorick, and finding them in there. So, when they were last out, this was like the third trip that you guys had made out, we conned everyone, Lynn and Adela, to come over, and they went out in the cemetery. And of course, you can see places that, while there's no headstone, there's this decorative well, and we have alerts. And so again, pointing these things out. The other thing that's worth looking at is you say, well, look at all these nice white crosses. Well, someone said, this cemetery looks funny. We should put crosses in even though we don't think there's anything there. And so the dogs did a really fabulous job doing that. We were able to map it in and be able to give them information at the cemetery. So again, a fabulous use of this in more modern settings that we put it. Now, this last story is going to be a story that you will come in Act 2, okay? And Act 2 is because, let's put this, archaeologists all these years, but I might as well have the word sucker written across my forehead in laundry marker. Because what happens, hi, this is the city of Rio Hondo, and I have the Veterans Affairs, and they want one of their veterans buried in a national cemetery. And, well, he's buried out here, and we need to get people out here to help us do this, and there's a rock out here. And I'm going, why are you calling me? Call a funeral home and do it. Well, we need you out here. And this is where I sucker in Juan, and I sucker in everyone else. And so, when this is finished, not finished yet, it will have to be titled Finding Private Robinson. Or is it Private Robinson? We'll get to that. A little archaeology thing. Here's this guy's pedigree, if you will. Born 1940. We all know that Depression comes a few years later. You can see he had to make ends meet when he was a teenager, working in the CCC, and he enlists a full year before the United States goes into the war at nearby Fort Brown. We're right near Brownsville, Texas, where we're working. He goes in, and like many folks at that time period, probably had stomach problems that got better in 2 weeks because they were getting 3 meals a day. That was not uncommon. Private Robinson goes out, and he is serving the infantry. You can see he serves the whole time, and he has the misfortune of being killed in August of '44, so about D-Day plus 2 months, more or less. Now comes the question when you look at these things. I first want you to notice how I've spelled this name, Robeson. Before I called him Robinson. It gets better. According to some accounts, some folks say, oh, he was buried in 1944, and I'll show you the evidence of that. But we have a newspaper account that says he was buried yesterday, being August 5th, 1948. So you start off with this, the application for the headstone made by his mother was the 16th of October, 1948. So in one case, it's 4 years after he's killed, but it is after the other date. There are problems, but it also says, send it to his mom. You can see Annie Wilson in Rio Grande. That's fabulous. So we go, okay, there's his picture and everything else and his unit badge. So we're trying to figure out, well, what happened? Well, James had said, if something happens to me, I want to be buried in the front yard of the house. So, piece of cake, find the house. Well, we find this aerial photo is pointed to us, late 1940s, and you look at it and there's this field. It's a bad angle because it's an oblique, it's hard to see what's going on, but there's this lone house out there. And you go, hey, you look at it, you see its juxtaposition of the road, everything else, this is the front yard. Well, so here we go. What's this guy's name to begin with? You always in line, is this set in stone? Well, if there's a problem with who cut this rock, I'll let you figure it out. So we've got that. And of course, it has his day, when he died. And then we have a newspaper account from 4 years later in 1952 that his little sister has died, and you can see it's spelled Robinson, and says on the bottom there that has been buried in the family plot at the residence. Now, that's 10 minutes. See, I've got 5 minutes to go. So we get through all this, we go, great, here's all this. Well, what are we going to believe? What is what, who's who? We find, you can see this kind of breakdown of a family lineage, who's married to whom, names changing, everything else, who's this. And of course, his mother, who was born Ann Wilson, ends up marrying a guy named Buck Wilson. So we've got names moving back and forth. And then there's a newspaper article that says, well, the family sold the plot, they didn't want to take the bodies, and the person that purchased it, says here, they moved it to the edge of the road. So you can see it down there, buried by the edge of the road. Wonderful. And they said his sister was buried next to him. So, by the edge of the road, there's his rock, there's a tree. Could that be his sister? Who knows? A newspaper account from 2000, his childhood friend, Rodriguez, says, I've been coming here for 56 years. Saying, because 1944. The problem is, in 1944, Rodriguez was serving in the U.S. Army Air Force in Europe. He wasn't there in 1944. And the guy wasn't probably buried until 48. So anyways, we have all this. So, how hard is this project going to be? Says Juan and me. And we drag Karina out with us. And Karina's a forensic person. We go out, we do ground penetrating radar, we go back and forth. Here's the location of the stone. This is a 1962 image. Very different. There are more houses, everything else not really clear. We go through it, nothing shows up. We go back again. 3 minutes, I'll get through it. 3 minutes, we go back and we auger. Juan builds up his shoulders, digging this thing down here. Nothing. Call in the dogs. Piece of cake, the dogs will come out. The dogs come out. We have a blue norther come in November. Should have shown that picture of your feet. Everything's out there. It's freezing cold. Nothing is happening. Everything's blowing like crazy. We don't have anything. We're uncertain. So the guys come back 4 months later. We come back and you have the dogs wired for sound at that point. They're walking all over the place. You can see checking the area again a second time over by where the headstone. Nothing from the dogs, nothing else. And for the hell of it, we send them over to the other side of the road. They go over to the other side of the road, and lo and behold, there's an alert. And you go, oh, Oh, that's really nice. There's a alert. But if you'll notice right there, there's a chain link fence. And all of my archaeology friends with those ground penetrating radars, you let me know about chain link fences, okay? Ain't gonna work. So we have that there again. We have that area located, just showing all these things, pointing it on the maps back and forth. Another fellow comes out, he flies his drone, he's doing infrared, and we said, well, can you interpret it? No. Well, we waited for that. So Juan and I, working with him, we're gonna go out there, and on the 27th of March, it rains 20 inches of rain. And this place is basically underwater. So what do? We meet with the city manager, and he doesn't know this, but I took this photo. Bad Russ. Of the four of us there going in, and we're going to try to look for him again this fall. And after several discussions, not over a cocktail yet, we might have to bring back some of our 4-footed and 2-footed friends to make sure we're doing the right damn thing. So I will say that after 27, 28 years and being only 39 years old with my dear friends, this has been one of the greatest adventures and exciting parts of my career. I think the human remains detection dogs is something that is long overdue. And as you saw back on that first slide, I think we did our first publication on that in 2006. And so we're very honored to be part of the continuing work, and I thank you for your time, and if I ran over, mea culpa. All right, that's it.